I've actually stopped asking myself what value do what value am I? I think I've stopped asking that myself that question, and I've looked at it differently. What are my values in life? And then each and every day, instead of trying to be of value to someone else, because sometimes that's anxiety producing, I'm going to go out there and live and intentionally live my values, which for me is love, health, and adventure.
Welcome to Normalize the Conversation by Inspiring My Generation. I'm your host, Francesca Reicheter. Today's guest, Dr. Haley Perlus, is a performance psychologist who teaches athletes, leaders, high achievers how to build mental toughness and thrive under pressure. We're exploring how sports psychology can teach us about resilience, confidence, and staying grounded in your purpose no matter the challenge. If you've ever felt the weight of performance pressure, this one's for you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am very excited for our conversation, but before we begin, I want to check in. How are you really?
How am I really? I'm grounded. I have things going on and a lot going on, but I feel grounded today, which is nice.
I love that. It's hard sometimes when you have so much going on to be able to get grounded in the present moment. I know for me, that's something I really struggle with, and I'm trying to learn. I don't know how people do it sometimes, though.
I think simple is best.
True.
I really do. Those morning walks and getting fresh air, the connecting with loved ones, for me, listening to music, moving my body. So no matter what I did that this morning. My today was 30 minutes of yoga. Sometimes it's 15 minutes, sometimes it's an hour. Just something will always be better than nothing. And that's something that I remind myself of. And so how am I going to be outside today? Maybe it won't be for the entire, 30-minute walk, because maybe it's only about 10 minutes, but I am going to go outside. But what will that look like? I am going to do yoga, but how will that look like? So I don't really skip these activities because I know they're important. They just may look different depending on the day, but something will always be better than nothing. And I think that's what helps me to stay grounded.
Love that. I think for me, a big issue is one, I make it overcomplicated. I don't often simplify it. And I think it has to be these big things. If I don't have an hour and a half to go for a walk, then I don't have time to go for a walk, right? I convince myself that it has to be these really strict rules. And then I get into my head and I'm like, well, I should have planned better. I should have gotten up earlier. I should have done all these things. And I'm just fighting with myself all the time. Like this morning, I woke up anxious, and instead of going for a walk, instead of doing what I should have done, I had 3 cups of coffee. So I amplified. It's going great over here.
And what's interesting is that I'm not a big coffee drinker, but I do drink um maybe once, twice a week. But this morning in particular, I haven't been sleeping. Last night I did sleep, but it's usually like the consistency. And I intentionally chose not to drink coffee today, and intentionally did the yoga, walked outside, and I think one thing that I've learned from myself, which is something that I really want to share and teach everyone that I coach, is is to give yourself some grace, but never let yourself off the hook. And you can't just give yourself grace because, well, I can't do the hour and a half walk, so then I'm just going to do nothing. That's giving yourself some grace and justifying and coming up with all the rationals why that's okay. And I'm included, can easily convince ourselves that it's okay not to go for that walk. However, if you give yourself some grace, this isn't a fabulous day. I woke up anxious today. I woke up overwhelmed. I haven't been sleeping. So if you give yourself that understanding and then you follow it up with don't let yourself off the hook, what can you do? If it's not an hour and a half, maybe it's 15 minutes. If it's, so it's just instead of trying to grab the external support, which is very helpful. I'm not saying it's not helpful, but I want to be my own source of support. So how can I not let myself off the hook and just do something, even though I am going to give myself some grace today? Does that make sense?
It does. And now I'm thinking about where I can add a walk and getting outside into my schedule. And I easily can. I have to go to the grocery store. It's going to take me just as much time to walk there as it will to drive there. So I will walk there and give myself grace that maybe I don't have that hour and a half, but I definitely have 10 minutes each way to get that walk and get outside, clear my head.
Yes. And only you know when, well, not only you know, I didn't mean it like that. You then have something to build on. You're still doing something instead of getting caught up in the spiral of I'm not doing anything, I'm giving up.
I'm so glad we're having this conversation today. I really needed to start my day with this because
Oh,
I
good.
do get in my head and then I don't perform at my best just as myself and in my work. And one thing that I found super, super cool about you was you do sports psychology, right? And being able to help athletes perform at their peak. I've been watching the US Open, and there's been a lot of conversations with Coco Gauff and Naomi Osaka about their mental health and their mental resilience, being able to continue to perform during moments of Coco Gauff had a panic attack on the court and was crying, and how she was able to overcome that. I don't think there's a lot of conversations publicly with athletes talking about the anxiety and the pressure that they're facing and how they're kind of almost forced to push through without that space to really feel and get through.
It's getting better with regards to the exposure. All these wonderful, brave, courageous, and high-performing athletes are speaking up and speaking and definitely speaking out. And it's an interesting thing because you'll look at someone like Coco Gauff, and to get to her level of sport, she needs to have mental toughness. But mental toughness and mental health are not the same thing. And one thing that I'm finding myself sharing a lot and explaining a lot is the difference between mental health and, let's say, performance psychology, this sport mindset, this pressure mindset, mental toughness. Mental toughness is being able to, have a laser focus on only what is relevant, to be able to show up even when you don't want to. So to always find that motivation, to have unshakable confidence. Now, that plays into mental health, but mental health is your emotional, your psychological, your social well-being. They're actually very different. Now, do they help each other? Yes. Do they hurt if you're not working on one, can it hurt the other? Yes. But it's interesting when you have some elite performers. I mean, she could not get to where she has gotten to, Coco Gauff, for example, without being mentally tough. But there is certainly some, mental health that she's raising awareness to, and they are different, even though there's certainly a lot of connecting dots. They are different.
I didn't even realize they were different. And I never thought about the amount of mental toughness you have to be able to really zone in, to be present, to be able to get through those moments that there's a lot on the line. There's high stakes, right? Am I going to make it to the next round? Am I going to win? I've worked so hard to get here to this moment, especially I mean, when I'm watching, we do see a lot of cheers from the audience. And then for the other players, there's a lot of silence when they're doing well. So also, I can't imagine what that's like to be able to not let that impact how you're showing up and performing on the court.
You have to train for that. They have to be willing. They're standing on that court all alone. And there's going to be a lot of noise, and some noise are going to be in celebration of them, and some noise are going to be in booing of them. And yeah, it takes a lot of mental toughness to tune that out. Another fabulous example is Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps was, is mentally tough, zones into the pressure, embraces the pressure, sets goals like no one else, has the level of commitment, has the confidence. But now, I mean, he is at the front lines talking about mental health, which is what he has suffered from. Because you can have all of this success in one area of your life, but if you don't know who you are outside of that success, and then the pressure to carry on that legend, carry on that reputation, um, and no one really knows, they don't really know who you are, but you have this persona. We're all hiding to some level. And so I think these athletes that are speaking up about mental health don't want to hide anymore and they want to find their true identity. And it is not sport. Sport is something they do. It is not who they are. And for you and me, you know, you have a, wonderful podcast and you have a huge mission. That is what you do. That is not who you are. And I'm a sports psychologist. It is what I do. It is not who I am. Who I am is a person I consider myself to be bright, full heart. When I'm with you, you've got my full, full, full heart. And I also have this ability to want to see your strengths before I see your weaker areas. Like that's who I am. And then I apply that character to all the various roles in my life. And I think that's also how I then stay grounded. Because if one area of my life isn't going well or just really overwhelming, and then another area of my life is going well, but really pressure producing, which is really what's going on right now, um, I can still stay grounded and follow through my dailies because I know who the person I am, which is bright, full hearted, and a strength magnet. And then I get to apply those roles to the best of my ability on any given day, or apply those characteristics to the best of my ability towards the roles that I play in life.
Yeah. Our identity is not what we do. And that's something I've really been trying to learn for myself lately. I slipped into a severe depressive episode, I want to say maybe like 2.5 months ago, because I wrapped my identity up in one aspect of my work with the workbooks, for example, and things were moving forward and I was really excited. And then with one little setback, I completely shut down and was like, oh no, I'm not good enough. I'm failing, and completely just fell apart instead of being able to breathe, ground myself in the moment. I felt like I didn't have any value anymore, any worth. It's so hard when you attach who you are to one aspect of your performance or your work to be able to exist in those moments where maybe it's not what you expect it to be.
You use the words, I want to focus on one thing you said because it stuck with me. I'm not of value. One of the greatest teachings that I had was from Byron Katie, who talks about, judging your neighbor is, I think, the work that she has, but she basically asks us to, I call it the Swiss cheese exercise, poke holes, because cheese has holes in it. So poke holes at a statement like that. I'm not of value. And the first question is how do you know that to be absolutely true? And where is the proof that it is 100% guaranteed? And then the second question is, where's the proof that that's not true? And for you, all you have to do is open up any of your social media platforms and you see the comments, not just the likes, but you see the comments and how many people you've helped. Now, if we're not careful, that puts more pressure on you to complete this workbook, right? But the first is to really like look to see like, is that statement absolutely true? It could just be your thinking. And we don't have to believe every one of our thoughts. And that's another lesson that I learned from a 10-year-old. I was over at one of my best friends, but also a fabulous teacher. And I went over there. It was a relationship gone wrong. And I am just crying and crying. And nobody will ever love me. And I'll never, why do I keep going through this? And I'll never forget her 10-year-old daughter looked at me and said, Haley, it's just your thinking. And you don't, and then I followed it up with, you're right. And I don't have to believe every one of my thoughts. And where is there proof that I don't believe this thought? Why is this not the truth? And then the second piece about values is an interesting thing when it comes to living our life to our fullest and having, just this sense of fulfillment. I've actually stopped asking myself, what value am I? I think I've stopped asking that myself that question, and I've looked at it differently. What are my values in life? And then each and every day, instead of trying to be of value to someone else, because sometimes that's anxiety producing, I'm going to go out there and live and intentionally live my values, which for me is love, health, and adventure. So when I'm not feeling my best, it's not of, because when you're not feeling your best, it's hard to feel of value. So when I'm not feeling my best and start of no, I'm not of value, I look to see, okay, how am I going to for myself bring health, love, and adventure into my life? What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? How am I going to take responsibility in that? And then that lifts me up because now I'm living into my values, which automatically allows me to be of value to others because I'm going to best support others because I just took care of myself.
In value. I love that within myself. A lot of times it's so hard, at least for me, to distinguish my values and what I value and what I enjoy and what I love versus what value I offer to others, which is why my identity became wrapped up in my work. Because it was like, I enjoy this, but it helps others. And then if I'm not helping others, who am I? Being able to distinguish my values from my value to others, I think could make a real big difference in how I show up for myself, how I make moments to give myself grace without letting myself off the hook instead of completely falling apart, being able to breathe and take the next step.
It's added pressure. When you have the pressure to be of value to someone else, it's a lot of pressure. And sometimes in a good mood, when you're feeling really good, you're like, yeah, let's bring that on. I mean, I do. When I'm feeling my best, I love that pressure. Yeah, let me be of value to others because I'm coming from a place of confidence. I'm coming from a place of readiness to go and be that person. But in the moments when I'm not, being of value to someone is a lot of pressure and that can create a lot of anxiety. So taking it back and putting that aside for a second and just living into my personal values, raising my level of energy. Well, now I can actually then go out and be, a support system to somebody else. We cannot be a support system to anybody if we're not first a support system to ourselves. But this takes work, right? So I just threw out there love, health, and adventure. I didn't just come up with that. That is work that I took a moment, many moments, to really decide for myself, to really choose my three that resonate, that ignite, that really connect. And so that they're there when I want them. They're there when I need them. And then the same thing about who I am when I'm my best self, my character. I didn't just come up with bright, full heart strength magnet. I've done the work. And so those are my anchors. And I have to use them to my advantage so that I can then stay grounded, energized, and then go out there and do the best job I can for all the people that I work with.
So how did you figure out what your values were within you? So if you ask me like what my values are, right now my initial thoughts would be connection and integrity, looking at how I'm connected with others, and then integrity, always honoring my word. And if I give others my word, but it seems like my values are all about other people. They have almost nothing to do with supporting myself. So, how do you figure out what your actual values are?
You just started the process. So you talked about connection and integrity and, living up to my word. Basically you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, which I also highly value. Um, but those could all be wrapped up in one, and maybe it's integrity. And maybe from integrity, from there, that you're going to be connected to people. So that's one value. And now you have the freedom, because the psychology of persuasion, getting us to take action, um, the research shows that three is really the magic number. Any more than three, the confused mind says no. You get confused more than three options. But you do want to have a good group of three to work with. It's when you ask your children what do they want for dinner, hopefully you're not saying, what do you want for dinner? And then they have to like, I don't know. Do you want chicken? Do you want fish? Do you want pasta? And then they can choose from those three, right? So it gives you a little bit of, they have power, they have autonomy, and they can go with it. But if you were to give them 10 options, then they get confused. So three is the magic number, but you just had all of your connection, human connection, which is of value in one box. And now you've freed up two more categories. And so now you're just going to now explore. So because I've shared mine, get curious and see what else is out there. You could also just, do a quick get on the internet and say, hey, give me a list of values and then see which ones pop up. For some people, that's great. For some people, that's daunting. But the idea is to just open your eyes and start exploring. And then also look back to, what you feel compelled to do. So for me, for example, just this summer, I was visiting my family in Canada at my parents' cottage, our lake house, and there was an option to either go for dinner, go to a restaurant, sit inside for dinner, or for me just to eat whatever was in the house and get on the paddleboard and go enjoy the sunset on a paddleboard. And everybody chose dinner. And I said no, thank you to the dinner because in that moment, I wanted to experience my health and my adventure. And I went on the paddleboard, and it was a rather simple choice for me. I'm not a foodie. I am more of a being outside nature. So in that moment, now, was there some social pressure to go have dinner? There absolutely. But I have learned to not succumb to that pressure and stay true to my values. And so then from there, I get to go and have more discernment for myself, have more choice for make clear choices. And I simply said, no, thank you. I'll see you after dinner. And they had a wonderful time. I had a wonderful time and moved on with fueling myself, with energizing myself with my values.
Yeah, I love that. We don't have to do what everyone else is doing just because they're doing it. We can do what's right for us. And I think that's something I didn't really ever learn. I always felt like I just had to do what everyone else was doing, even if it didn't make me maybe feel my best, and another option would have felt more aligned with me. But it wraps up in this pressure to be who I think I should be and what the expectation should be to do instead of what nourishes me. There was a question I asked recently when I was doing an art therapy group, which we were like playing a game and there were like star cutouts and you were making your North Star. And the question was like, what goals feel nourishing versus impressing? What goals do you have that are about other people and the way they perceive you and about the way that you feel within yourself? And use that to create your North Star. And I realized even goals that I thought were about me, I was constantly looking to how other people were going to perceive them. And I wasn't really aligning myself with who I wanted to be. I was aligning with how I wanted people to comment on the Instagram post, how many people I wanted to like the post, how many people I wanted to purchase or receive something. It was never about how I wanted to create, how I wanted to feel.
In the world of business, I do understand that it's both, right? I mean, you and I are in the same areas where we're creating content and put it out there, and we want to know what people want because we want to create content for that. And those comments do matter. But in sports psychology, we have a basic understanding, actually, in all of life. But when I'm working with athletes, and I'll just use this as an example because we can probably understand, there's the extrinsic motivation, the trophy, becoming the champion, being recruited to a college team, getting a paycheck for becoming a professional athlete. That's the extrinsic motivation. And then there's the intrinsic motivation, and I call that heart motivation. Doing it because you feel connected, doing it because you feel confident, doing it because you have choice. You chose it. Both are important. So, like you said, like those comments, that might be the extrinsic motivation. Whether people are going to like your comment, your content or not, that's important. That's the trophy. But it has to be balanced out with that heart. And what often happens, if we're not careful, that trophy takes over. And so now we're experiencing anxiety, maybe burnout, maybe, fear, certainly doubt, because that trophy is overpowering. So it's not that the extrinsic motivation is bad. It's not that looking to see what other people want from you is bad, but neglecting while you're doing this in the first place is really for you. It's something that you're contributing because there's somewhere deep inside you where you have that heart motivation that needs to shine equally, and then we're good. So it's when we just put too much weight on others and not enough weight on our own heart, that's where we get in trouble. It's not that what others think about us is bad. We live in this world, it's important, but there needs to be a really good balance. And I'll share a story if I can. There is an athlete that I was working with, and she just graduated high school and now she's ready for university. And she's an athlete, and she had the opportunity to take a gap year and possibly qualify for the Olympics. So it wasn't a guarantee, but there was a good chance that she might be able to qualify for the Olympics. So take 1 year and do that. And of course, everyone's saying, "Oh my goodness, what an awesome opportunity. You get to go to the Olympics, you get to have that experience. Who wouldn't do that?" Well, she came to me because she really wasn't sure. And so we were able to go through a lot of like pros and cons on all different levels and really find out, why she would pursue it or why she would pursue university right away. And we narrowed it down to three. And then from the three, we narrowed it to one. What is the one thing that you really have to focus on? And I applaud her for taking the time to be and really being able to be truthful with herself, because she said, "I don't know if I want it or if I want to want it," it being the Olympics. And I said to her, "Great. We've now pinpointed that moment. Go and take some 3 days. I don't want you to think about it intentionally. I want you to go and live your life. It's going to be in the back of your mind. Just let it do what it needs to do." And in those 3 days, she came back and her brave self said, "I don't want it. I want to want it." And so she went off to university.
Wow, that's such a powerful question too. Do I want it? Do I want to want it? Because it is so hard to figure out, first of all, what we want in general. And when there is this external expectation and we put so much weight on it and we forget to check in with ourselves, it's so easy to get caught up in this is what I should want, so this is what I'm going to do. I love that reframe. I'm trying to process this because I definitely feel like there is a lot of conversation on extrinsic being bad. And like you said, you're right. Caring about the comments isn't bad. That's not making me a bad person a lot of times. I was in therapy yesterday complaining so much. I'm like, I hate that I feel this way. I hate that I care. Why do I care? What is wrong with me? And I was like going down this spiral, but it's not wrong to care as long as I'm also balancing that with caring about myself too and where I fit into it. If it's only about how people receive it and what comes from it, it is going to take something that once felt fulfilling to me and turn it into something that just burns me out till I don't care anymore.
Yeah, I don't think caring about them is bad. I actually don't know how anyone wouldn't.
Yeah.
You're putting yourself out there, which you are. Now, maybe when you get to a place where you have, and you actually might be there where you have so much great positive feedback that the negative doesn't matter anymore, right? But for people who are just starting or building, and maybe people who are also as big, um, it, I don't know how you could possibly not care. It's not about not caring. It's making sure that what others think is not the only way you're evaluating yourself. It's not the only way you're judging yourself. That's where we fall susceptible to poor mental health is when what others think about us is the only thing that matters. That's the trouble that we can get ourselves into. So it does matter, but not nearly as much as how we think about ourselves and what our close, friends and family and loved ones see and what they want. So we just have to balance it out in a healthy way. A lesson that I continue to learn all the time because I'm 2 years into social media right now, and I will tell you it's a slow progress and I am my greatest client, if you will, making sure that I really stay grounded and looking outside at the comments because who wouldn't? I give myself like, of course, I'm not gonna not care because I just don't think that's possible, but I'm not gonna only care about that.
I am so grateful we're having this conversation right now because I put so much pressure on myself to pretend like it doesn't get to me at all and pretend like that's not in my back of my mind, right? Or honestly, at the front of my mind. How is this going to be received? And I felt like I was internalizing it as that's bad, but it's not. It's human. Of course, like you said, this is a business. Of course, we care. And I've never had a conversation like this where someone validated the fact that it's okay to care, that it's not wrong, it's not bad. And maybe if I sit with that more, I'll stop focusing so much on that being the only source of my validation. And how can I create space for both?
I just won't weigh so heavily. It's the same thing, a little bit different, but similar concept to failure. In my world, working with athletes, oh my goodness, the fear of failure is so big. And it's not just in sports, that's just I know that it is so big in sports, but in school and starting your life, new job, new business, new relationships, fear of failure is everywhere. And this notion of failure is not an option. I think it's one of my least favorite lines. Failure is an option. Failure does happen. Whew. Thank goodness. Now let me get that weight off my shoulders and not let me focus so much on it because the more I'm focusing on failure isn't an option and what if I fail, all that does is make my body tense, create more anxiety, and distract me from being my best self. So if I'm just like, yeah, I get it. I don't want to fail. But but I don't really, I'm just not going to care as much as ever, as I'm told to. I'm just not going to care as much. I don't want it to happen, but I'm just not going to let it consume me, let it contract me. Whew, failure is an option. Awesome. Hope it doesn't happen, but let me move over here and live into my values, be my three best words, and go out there and give it my best shot. And then the whole you don't lose, you just learn. I do get that piece too. But in the moment, no, you lost and it feels really bad and it's okay. Like it's okay. Let's cry about I remember when I got divorced. It was 12 years, so it was a pretty significant part of my life. And I'll never forget my father came into a room and I was crying, but I was trying to also not to cry, like trying to. And he just came into my room and I visited my family, I think, for 3 months and I hardly came out of my room. Like it was just those moments. And he came in and he said, cry and then get up. But it wasn't get up, it was cry and then get up. So when we have a loss, when we have a failure, when we have a breakdown, don't just say, okay, I got to turn this into a lesson. No, yeah, you will. But give yourself a moment to cry about it. Give yourself a moment to be sad about it. And so that you then can get up and learn from it.
I- Again, I love that because there's a lot of times, at least the conversations that I've been exposed to and part of, has been crying is weak or wrong. Don't cry, just get up and figure it out. And that's something that's been told to me over and over again. So whenever I have those moments where I feel like I'm breaking down, where things feel like too much and I need that space to cry so I can get back up, I often internalize it as that's wrong and that's like bad and I shouldn't cry. I should be able to just bounce back within seconds. But it feels so good when you can actually feel and get it out. And usually after I cry, I can stand back up so much better than those moments where I am just so overwhelmed. Then I hit that breaking point. Then I hit that point of burnout. Then I start to not care about what I'm doing or myself. And then that's when I start to go deeper and deeper into a depressive episode. And I wish that someone had said this to me earlier. It's okay to cry and then get up.
This whole, be strong. And it's funny because in my world in sports, the concept is mental toughness. I've already used it with you today. And it's not about being tough all the time. It's just not. We are human beings. Every single one of the emotions, including sadness, has a benefit, some self-awareness, some forced recovery, some just moment of stillness, even though you're crying, and that actually gives you energy, it gives you some polarity. This doesn't feel good. That felt a lot better. Why am I feeling this, feeling like this? There's self-reflection. So there's definitely a time and a space. In fact, I stole an exercise from the television show Shrinking. Apple TV, a show called Shrinking. I won't give it away to people who haven't seen it, but it's about shrinks. It's about psychologists. And one of the psychologists gave his client, his patient, an exercise, and it was to intentionally, for 15 minutes every single day, cry. And I do this for myself, and I do this for the people that I work with now. There'll be moments where a good place for me to do it is in my car. So I'll go in my car and I'll intentionally put on some sad music. And I literally just for a moment see, okay, is there anything for me to be sad about today? Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. And then it's that moment for me to do it intentionally on purpose. And sometimes, yeah, okay, I need a song. Maybe I need two. And then other times, yeah, no, I'm good. But I gave myself the opportunity to feel anything that I needed to feel, and then I'm good. And then when there is really something that I have to work through, to do it intentionally, to allow yourself, get in the car, put on the sad song. And then I needed, less songs. First, maybe it was like three songs, then it became two songs, then it became one song. Because you do work through it, but you have to work through it. You cannot escape it.
I'm so gonna try this. See, I take the complete opposite approach. So my hour and a half is usually my hour and a half frustration walk, where it's those moments where I want to cry, but I don't want to let myself cry. So recently I had a friend I texted, was like, I'm feeling very, very upset about this. And she called me to talk about it. I was like, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to cry. I'm just gonna walk it off. And that's the approach I've taken for so long is don't cry, put on headphones, blast the song that's going to make you feel good, and just walk until you don't want to cry anymore. There was one time I walked 12 miles before I was finally able to like breathe again. And I felt like, oh, I was wrong for wanting to cry. But what if I had just given myself the space to cry from the start? I probably would not, my feet probably wouldn't have hurt so much.
For walking so long. Now, I'm a big believer in after your series of sadness, then you want to. So for me, it's like for me, I've got this Perlus playlist, and so I'll put on my sad songs, and then I'll turn on my Perlus playlist. And that is, a combination of just whether the lyrics are inspiring, the harmony, childhood memories. So I do have my Perlus playlist, but it's ready. So I'll play my sad songs depending on, what it is that I'm sad about. And then I will intentionally move on to my Perlus playlist that starts to inspire me and starts to remind me of my childhood and my everyone that I love and all the gifts that I have. So I do make that transition, but I make the transition. I don't just snap my fingers and demand me to go feel enlightened and inspired. I do the transitional work.
You feel, and then you get up. I
And then you get up.
think so much. It's so silly to me that all these years, like post psych unit, creating resources, going to school to be a therapist, doing all these pieces that I still don't know these things. And that's what I love so much about this podcast and people like you who come on the podcast and share this with me. Because if I didn't have access to these conversations, I would not know. And I think that's a big thing for so many of the people listening, right? It's a lot of times the conversation has been, I know at a young age, I was taught big girls don't cry. Love that song, hate that saying, right? Like, get over it. Cry me a river, build a bridge, get over it. All these things that made me feel so invalidated, or something that my dad, I love you so much. If you're listening, you're probably not, but if you are, I love you. But something he says to me a lot is stop acting like a baby. You're acting like you're 2 years old. Anytime that I feel like I want to cry. And when that's been the message for so long, it made it feel wrong. And like I had to try to snap my fingers and make that feeling go away. But I imagine as I start practicing these exercises, I'll probably feel a lot better and more connected to myself if I allow myself to feel instead of suppressing everything, trying to pretend that the pressure isn't building to a place where I feel like I'm about to explode all the time.
We need to change the song. It's no longer Big Girls Don't Cry. It's my party and I'll cry if I want to. It's my life and I'll cry if I want to. So that I then can get up, right? We always want to follow that piece up. Giving ourselves permission is a really powerful tactic. I have another story. I'll never forget a young girl. Her mother came to me because she was throwing up every time of her competition. She was feeling really anxious every time of her competition and she hated throwing up. So she came to me and all I did was ask her, why not let yourself throw up? Do you feel better afterwards? Yeah. I mean, I know it's not fun to throw up, but do you feel better afterwards? Do you feel looser? Do you feel lighter? Do you feel like you can just kind of then focus on your performance? She's like, yeah. I'm like, so throw up. She never threw up again.
Oh, wow.
She gave herself permission to feel, and that immediately allowed her to expand instead of always being contracted. So I'm not saying you'll never cry again if you give yourself permission to cry, but give yourself permission to feel because you're right. The pretending, I'm not a big believer in fake it till you make it. That's another one of my least favorite lines. Um, because you're right. I think you pretend and you pretend and you pretend and then ultimately just build and build and build. And then you do not have any control of your emotions and you do explode. So I'm not a big believer in fake it till you make it. But I am a big believer in creating space intentionally to provide these opportunities for you to experience what you're feeling. Because if I'm having a sad day, but I'm traveling and I'm about to get up on stage in front of, hundreds, thousands of people and deliver a keynote, now's not the time to cry. So I have to be able to press mute. I have to be able to shelf it, but not shelf it forever. Like I'm going to give myself space when it is more appropriate time. So that's why I like the idea of acknowledging everything that I'm feeling, but being a little bit of my captain, like being a little bit of the conductor and creating space when appropriate to really go through this stuff.
I love that. Being intentional with that space to feel. That's so that's so powerful. I've had those moments before keynotes where all of a sudden I just had like nothing left inside me other than wanting, the needing to fall apart. And I remember this one time on the floor in full on tears up until 10 minutes before I had to speak. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to calm myself down, how I'm going to get through this. Just waited till I couldn't handle it anymore to just fall apart to a place where I felt like I didn't have any control. So to know that if I created space, intentional space to feel, whether it's before or after or both, whenever I need to, maybe I won't go into those moments with my eyes all puffy and struggling to keep them open and pretend like I'm really happy in that moment to be there. So I appreciate you. There's so much that I'm taking away from this. I'm excited to implement. I will be sending you an update. So thank you so much for joining me. For listeners who are interested in learning more about you, following your work, how can they connect?
You can find me on Instagram and LinkedIn. The best place too is my website where I have everything that I offer, free master classes. And you can even write me a personal note there and I will get it and I will respond. So lots of opportunities right on my website, drhaleyperlus.com.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website inspiringmygeneration.org to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.